Welcome back to the Turks. Mark Thompson here for Cenk, and our panel, Robin Sachs, Urmila Aragawi, Chris Moody is joining us from Yahoo News, and Logan Pollard is joining us as well for the segment. We'll talk to everybody in a minute, but Urmila, this is a bizarre tale from this NSA investigation and the smear campaign.
That's right. We'll first start with the NSA and the latest from that. We're getting the information from The Guardian, the British newspaper that seems to know more about American business than American newspapers. They start by C5A saying that the NSA still collects and sifts through large quantities of Americans' online data, despite the Obama administration's insistence that the program that began under Bush ended in 2011. So surprise, surprise, we've been getting, once again, the least untruthful information and not the whole truth. They continue to say, while there is no reference to any specific program currently collecting purely domestic internet metadata in bulk, it is clear that the agency collects and analyzes significant amounts of data from the U.S. communication system in the course of monitoring foreign targets. Now, we'll get to a discussion about that in just a second, but today Obama is in Senegal. It's the first leg of his African trip, and although he wasn't there to talk about Snowden, the conversation turned to Snowden, so this is what he said about him.
No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker. I continue to be concerned about the other documents that he may have. That's part of the reason why we'd like to have Mr. Snowden in custody.
Now, that first little part was an attempt to make it seem like Snowden is not as big of a threat as the Obama administration feels that he is. But I think they are freaking out behind the scenes. If they could, they would scramble a bunch of jets to get him, but that's not really going to be very effective either.
I like how he was the hacker in the first sentence and Mr. Snowden in the second sentence.
Well, there goes Obama for you. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't really. That was interesting how he handled it sort of glibly initially, and then he got.
Right. So I wanted to open up to you guys. So we'll get to the smear in just a second, but the information that the Guardian is bringing out is just saying a little bit. It's not a lot more. It's just saying, look, they're watching you. You know that, but they're probably. Watching more of your emails and your phone conversations than you think. So let's get to the really interesting story, which is the attempt to smear Glenn Greenwald, which I think is pretty pathetic. The New York Daily News, they took a shot at him in an article published last night, and they start the first line of their article.
By the way, we should just say he's the
Greenwald,
journalist,
the Guardian journalist who has all the information that
connects
Snowden
to the NSA and to Snowden.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
and he's a regular on the
regular
Turks.
on the Young Turks, absolutely. So the article starts with this first line. The reporter who broke the story about the NSA's secret surveillance program has a little secret of his own. Now, here's the secret that they're talking about. In 2002, a friend of Glenn Greenwald's asked him to be a partner in his consulting company. One of their clients was a company called H.J. Harry Jocks. It's a porn company, all right? It's a client of theirs. They're a consulting company. They go on to say Greenwald and Butchell, his friend, agreed to help Peter Haas, the owner of the porn company, in return for 50% of the profits. But Haas refused to pay the company in its share of the profits, which led to a nasty legal battle. Now, the owner of the company has said that he called the deal off because Greenwald was demanding changes to the content of the video, which were and are unacceptable. Now, what about this makes Glenn Greenwald really responsible? His response is this. So that's the big discovery. A corporate interest in adult video, something the LLC shared with almost every hotel chain.
He was part of an LLC, is what he's talking about.
Fabricated emails and some back taxes and other debt. I'm 46 years old and like most people have lived a complicated and varied adult life. I didn't manage my life from the age of 18 onward with the intention of being a family values U.S. Senator. My personal life, like pretty much everyone else's, is complex and sometimes messy. Now, if this is the best they have on Glenn Greenwald has nothing to worry about.
You're saying I'm a regular guy with real stuff.
He's a regular guy. The headline from The Guardian is that he's connected to this porn company. He's connected to them in a business sense. Who's going to fault him for that?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Chris,
the point that,
go ahead,
I mean, the point that you were, I mean, that was the Daily News story that they quote unquote broke on Glenn Greenwald, and he made an effort to get out ahead of it yesterday by having his own rebuttal. But I think what's really really crazy about this is that none of this is really relevant to his reporting. So basically the message that the press is saying is if you write a controversial story, we're going to investigate everything about you, which effectively muzzles the press. And it's really outrageous that the press is really leading this charge.
Well, if you don't like the message, shoot the messenger. But this is like nothing compared to the call for charging him with crimes. I mean, that is what I have found completely outrageous. Talk about a chilling effect.
Chris, how does this affect you as a reporter? I've got to think to a degree you're outraged by this kind of thing.
Well, when you break a big story, especially an international story like this, and people come after your past for things that have nothing to do with the story, you're clearly doing something right. It's frustrating that he has to deal with all of this, but in a way, it's a point of pride. It's that some people are so angry about the truth that you are revealing in your stories. You're clearly hitting a nerve, and that's something I think a lot of journalists strive to do. We don't always want to be the target of attacks, but in a way, it's okay. And at the end of the day, look, people are going to remember that the NSA was committing all of these acts. People are going to remember what Edward Snowden did. They're going to remember Greenwald's story. They're not going to remember the Daily News story about Greenwald and something he did 10 years ago.
Should every journalist in this country stand up and draw the line here the same way they did when they realized that the AP had essentially their phone records taken by the NSA or by the government?
No, because I mean, we don't want to call out other news agencies for reporting news. Now, it might not have anything to do with the story, but I wouldn't want to say to other people, you're not allowed to say that about Greenwald. It's about his past, and I'm all for people doing profiles of interesting people and people that are doing big things in this world. But I don't think you're going to see a bunch of journalists stand up and say, how dare you write about other journalists? There's bigger fish to fry.
Although it does appear, Chris, it does appear that this is a real smear. I think your first point is really an effective one, which is, look, this is how good he was. They have to go back and find some little thing in an LLC that was related to porn and try to tar him with that. It has nothing to do, Logan, as you say, with the subject matter of his piece.
Right. I mean, to Chris's point, there's actually a longer, more in-depth profile in BuzzFeed today, which really fleshes out his career. And I came across Greenwald just working in news about 8 years ago, and he was very tenacious. He's very tenacious, very courageous. Oftentimes didn't agree with him, but he does his work. And I think this profile kind of shows you the tip of the iceberg in terms of the quality of his work.
Right.
How about the fact that it was honest? I mean, he honestly gave the answer, and it didn't take a subpoena. It didn't take a congressional hearing. It didn't take massive reporters knocking down his door. He just made a statement. He acknowledged it, and it's a big non-story.
Right. I think there's a difference between the BuzzFeed profile, which is a legitimate profile, and this New York Daily News article. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't tell people that they can't say things, but I do think it's our responsibility to say in public that these kind of news stories that are trying to smear journalists who really, as far as I can tell, are well-intended is not okay. It's not respected. You can do it. And it's the New York Daily News, so it's not like we have a high standard for them anyway. They're kind of sensational, but I do think we should call it out. I think when we don't say anything, we give these kind of stories power.
You know what I'm curious about is Chris's opinion about the allegations that Glenn's an advocate and that he has an opinion. I'm just curious, Chris, what you have to say about that.
I mean, he does have an opinion, but he's a reporter. I mean, you can be a reporter with an opinion. You can be a reporter that believes in something, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well, it's interesting. I think that the community of journalists, I think, is rising up, or at least making a lot of points that have been made a bit on this panel.
Small community, though. The larger community of journalists are really not backing Glenn Greenwald's career. I mean, not on a personal level, you don't have to defend him, but the fact that what he's doing is okay. It
may be a slow boil like the AP phone record boil, but it may continue for a while. In any case, when we come back, we talk about Rick Perry.